Welcome back to the Persistent Managers Podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping people managers and direct reports win together. So, I want to talk to you today about some interesting data I found from the Gallup organization. Now, in the description, I included that data source as the first thing so you could easily click or copy and paste it and look through at your own leisure if you got a quick 3 to 5 minutes. And if not, don't worry. I'm going to synthesize some of the information into the messaging of today's podcast episode. So let's go through the top 3 most trusted professions that the Gallup organization published on the top 3 most trusted professionals. Data point number 1 was nurses. Nurses had a trust rating of 78%. Pharmacists, number 2, had a trust rating of 63%. And veterinarians had a trust rating of 62%. Just a 1% difference. I would have thought it would have been a little higher because of how much we love animals in our country. But I found this very interesting because here's why. Recently, I had to go see my doctor, and we all know the stigma. They always make you wait in the lobby. And I think 20, 30 minutes is fair. However, this waiting took about a little over 90 minutes. I waited for my doctor's appointment. So you might be thinking, is he looking for a new doctor? And the answer is yes. But it took over 90 minutes for this appointment and had to go to the front staff and complain. I said, this is killing my time. I'm losing valuable time to get my work done with my projects. This is unacceptable. And all they said to me at the front desk was, we're sorry about your luck. Sorry about your luck. And then I left. Here's why this is bananas. Because when I look at this data, let's just stick with the top one, nurses, an 8% trust rating. So we'll just say if we kind of group that into, people in the medical field, but again, sticking to nurses or people in that area or arena, we associate not only with the nurses, but typically all the people around them with that trust rating, I believe. I think there's a variable of that when we look at this data. And that's why I was really upset leaving more than most appointments because I was like, I don't believe this. Like, these people are in the medical profession. Like, we got to help people, there's people with needs, etc. What's going on here? And it stung more because I include myself. I'm guilty. I'm raising my hand saying, look, I'm in the wrong for automatically assuming that all doctors, nurses, etc., people in that field want to be helpful. And I think there is still a massive amount of people in that industry. Like, there's no way you go to school for all that on some level, at least for most, and you're not at least wanting to help people. That's why it stung so much more. So now I want to talk about the bottom 3 and kind of connect some dots, if that's fair. So the lowest 3, going back to the source here, was that car salespeople, that's the term they use, were at a 10% trust rating. Stockbrokers were at a 10% trust rating too, and members of Congress had an 8% trust rating. Just to be clear, as a sales enablement training expert, as my full-time job, content creator to help people managers and direct reports win together, I am never going to talk about politics. I'm just not, because it'll taint and dilute my ability and my messaging and my ability to sell you on the ideas of improving skills. So I'm just not going to touch that topic. But going a little bit of a tangent, let me bring it back. So let's just look at the top one here and the lowest ranking, car salespeople. I look at that 10% rating and I think about how every time I go to my mechanic, and I'm going to group the service part of a car dealership into this discussion just to kind of bring home a point with this lateral quick story. I had to recently get brake pads, or I thought to get brake pads on my car because it was making this weird noise. Interestingly enough, I'm in the lobby and the service guy goes, hey, can I show you something real quick? Take a look at this. And he takes me out to the shop and, we're safe. And he says, you actually don't need new brake pads. Take a look at this here. And he shows me the thickness of the brake pad, why, how it works, etc. And I know a lot about this on a high level, but he also took the time to coach me, work with me, and give me insight and treated me almost as if I was a mechanic or somebody who worked on cars all the time, which I'm not. But I valued the experience. And interestingly enough, most people I have found, and I'm going to, you know, I hope this isn't disrespectful, kind of group service into the same data point here a little bit, because when you buy a car, you typically have a sales side, especially in bigger dealership, but you have a service side of the business. So I think sometimes there's some association we make with both parties. He was more helpful than my doctor. He was more helpful than the people. And not only him, but the staff, everyone I met with. And I I have paid more probably for oil changes and everything at this dealership. And I probably will continue to do that. And I think that's important. And we're going to tie it back to the data. So car salespeople have a 10% trust rating. Here's what's in your favor. And I'm going to not only talk to direct reports and sales managers now as I kind of transition here, I'm going to talk to any sales manager, any sales professional working here. Let's kind of all align on this. If it's the fact that sales, we're also going to put that in there, has one of the lowest trust rating, then that means that if you go against what 90% of people think and display the opposite, you're automatically in a higher category. Meaning, if you show that you're trustworthy, if you show that you're helpful despite the data amongst the masses, you're automatically going to be more memorable, top of mind, and build a stronger, more powerful pipeline, because consistently through your process, you communicate positive, helpful intent throughout your process. That should be empowering. That should be so exciting to hear, despite what this data says, because you break the mold. And when you break the mold and disrupt the data, you get the advantage on the other side of it. I really look at sales in three buckets, and this is not something new. This next part is inspired by a lot of reading I've been doing and listening, but I'm going to include a fourth bucket here shortly. So the typical three buckets you hear in sales is number one bucket, and you don't want these to be leaky buckets, obviously, is that you have a consultative sales process that you own. Okay, that's bucket number one. Bucket number two is that you have your scripts, selling skills, and your role playing, ideally daily or weekly or every other day, to refine those selling skills. That's bucket two. And bucket three is that you're able to consistently do that over a period of time while producing positive results. Ideally your closing rates, follow-up rates, etc. But I think there's a fourth leaky bucket that we don't talk about enough. And here's that fourth leaky bucket is, are you able to consistently communicate helpful intent while driving rapport in your consultative sales process? I think that's the fourth bucket we don't talk enough about in a lot of sales training. And I'm talking about it here on this podcast episode. So the call to action is, if you are in sales, you're a sales manager, you're a direct report in sales, what you want to align on here now, ending 2024, going into 2025, is how can we communicate more positive, helpful intent in our messaging and everything we do, so that way we dilute the masses of 90% of people who think that we're not trustworthy. I know that's really specific, but I think you got it. How do we fill the fourth bucket and not keep it from leaking to where we communicate helpful intent while driving rapport through our consultative sales process? And I'm extremely confident that if you keep that fourth bucket full without it leaking, along with the other three, and you go against the 90% of people think you're not trustworthy, not helpful, and you do that consistently over the next 90 days, I'm going to give you that deadline, 90 days from the time you hear this and so on. I think you're going to be extremely satisfied because you'll have a stronger pipeline, you'll be more top of mind, and you'll be a more powerful go-to sales professional who's going to not just be in sales, but really be viewed as a consultant, because consultants are the ones we look at who are most helpful at the end of the day, month, and year.